Hola, mi nombre es Leah Rogstad, and today we are going to talk about some tips and tricks to pass the multiple choice section of the AP Spanish and Language Culture exam. So to start off, let's look at the structure of the exam. In the first part of the exam, you have two multiple choice sections, section 1A, which is with written texts, and you'll be required to answer 30 questions in 40 minutes, and that's 23% of the entire exam score. And then section 1B is multiple choice with written text and audio text. And that will be 35 questions in 55 minutes, resulting 27% of your written or your AP exam score. Okay, some tips and tricks for the multiple choice. Number one, you want to be very conscientious of time. 30 minutes or 40 minutes for 30 questions is not a lot of time. So I recommend bringing an analog watch, not a smartwatch or an Apple Watch, as those are not permitted, to make sure that you have enough time, and do some practice exams so you know what that feels like. Similarly, you want to skip any questions or even texts that might be kind of challenging for you, and go to the easier ones first and then come back to those challenging texts. With the audio text, you will listen to it 2 times. So on that first time, I suggest taking notes right on the test packet so that you have notes about what you heard of the main ideas. And on that second try, you want to jot down more notes about specific information that you hear. And this may seem obvious, but you also want to make sure you understand what the question is actually asking. So focus on those question words of donde, cuando, a qué se refiere, because that's going to tell you exactly what the question is asking for. And on the AP exam, there are specific skills that these questions are asking. So they're going to ask you to identify main ideas and details of a text, purpose of a text, intended audience or who it's written for, techniques that the author uses to communicate what they're saying. They may ask you to explain the meaning of a certain expression or vocabulary word, and then, of course, the point of view or the opinion of the author. And all of these can kind of be sussed out by, first of all, paying attention to what exactly the question is asking, and then specific details on the exam. So let's look at a practice exam. This is from Wayside Publishing, but it'll just give us an idea of what we want to look for. So first of all, on this advertisement, we can see in the top right corner, it says Ayuntamiento de Ovejo, which already tells us that this is a government document. So even though it's an advertisement, knowing that it's from the government will help us answer those questions, because we're again thinking about what is the perspective of the author and who are they writing for. So I would go through this very quickly, skim it, and look for those keywords: dates, titles, people involved, basically the who, what, where, when. Similarly, on this second text, it was a more literary text, and this was probably the most challenging text for me. And as I skimmed it the first time, one of the keywords that I saw and underlined was mundo viril, which told me there might be something to do with gender or masculinity in this piece. And lo and behold, one of the questions was specifically about masculinity. So looking for those keywords and annotating the text as fast as you can before going to the questions. And similarly, when we're thinking about looking at different texts, you want to be very careful to pay attention to the titles of charts as well as the categories on charts, because that's going to help you answer the specific information and make sure that you're not confused on the answers. Because, for example, here we have men versus women and their opinion about believing science. And if you had not paid attention to those categories, you might choose one of the more general responses on the multiple choice. To go back to some last tips, don't be afraid to skip a text and come back later. So that literary text was a lot more challenging for me. So I actually skipped that and did the nonfiction text first because that was easier, and then went back to the literary text in my last 10 minutes of the exam. Of course, make sure to mark the questions that you're going to skip and come back. And again, pay attention to those headings, who wrote the piece, and the titles of graphs and tables. Last but not least, you do not lose points for wrong answers, so answer every question. And just to finish off, to give you a little bit of a boost of confidence, if you look at the AP Spanish language score calculator, you can see that even if you were to get, let's say, a 4 on the free responses, you can get a 50% on the multiple choice and still pass. And if you get higher, you can even get a 4 or 5. So you got this, and good luck.